Two drivers have cemented their status as veterans on the F1 grid, and now they're coming back as the new kids on the block with a chance of solidifying their position in F1 history. After both sitting this season out, Valterri Bottas and Sergio Perez have been announced as the two drivers that will lead the All-American charge. So why are Bottas and Perez the match made in heaven for Cadillac? Let's get into it. Approaching new regulations in 2026, every team on the F1 grid is once again going to have the challenge of developing a race car that can not only go fast but go from A to B. And that challenge is no greater than for Cadillac themselves. They're getting their ducks in a row to be the sport's 11th team, the first new team since Haas way back in 2016, 10 years ago by the time Cadillac arrived on the grid. That involves everything me and you might take for granted: personnel, manufacturing, assembling the car, communications, everything that goes into a Formula 1 team that we just think is part of it. And the two people we want to nail most of all are, of course, your drivers, the face of your team. Not just for the on-track action, but also the off-track things as well, which we know come with the territory in Formula 1. So up steps Valtteri Bottas, 20-time Grand Prix winner with 67 podiums to his name, 5 seasons alongside one of the greatest of all time in Sir Lewis Hamilton. But he also brings a wealth of experience from Williams, Sauber, and of course now coming into this new Cadillac outfit. And then you have Sergio Perez, who in my mind has had some of the most rotten luck we've seen in the sport in the last year and a half to 2 years. He just didn't have a great time towards the end of his Red Bull stay, and hoping he can turn the tide with this new Cadillac opportunity. But this brings also so much of a wealth of experience from Sauber, McLaren, Force India, and now into Cadillac with a really exciting and brand new opportunity. Both have incredible racing pedigree on track. They've both been incredible wingmen in their careers. We know that, with Perez helping Max win the 2021 title at Abu Dhabi, and Bottas playing a key role in Mercedes constructors titles, and lots of them as well, being there, picking up the points when it mattered. In fact, 58 podiums for the Brackley team out of his 67 alone in his career just showed how consistent he was to bring home the bacon alongside Lewis Hamilton. Or some days it was the other way around. As we know though, it's also what the two drivers bring off track, and when it comes to Perez coming into the team, he has a lucrative backing of reported $10 million salary for himself, but also then comes with a wave of his own sponsors and money with that. Continuing to back him are Telcel, Patron Tequila, Mexico's richest man, Carlos Slim, and randomly Kit Kat. And also the fact that this makes huge sense, of course, the links between the American and Mexican car markets and industries. They are huge, and of course, being a General Motors led alliance, that's going to really help the relationship with someone like Perez on the face of it to capture that market, and the relationship on the ground as well. And a nice sprinkling of all of that for the fans will come from merchandise. And apparently when Perez was at Red Bull, I didn't know this the other day, 65% of the merchandise of the entire Red Bull family was down to Perez the time he was there. So not even Max Verstappen had the most. It was all thanks to Sergio Perez. Well, 65% of it. And then for Valtteri, he has always been such a, I guess, likeable character, whether he's living his best Australian life.
And I love the famous Aussie lifestyle.
Or giving us that sharp shot and Finnish wit.
I mean, I don't know. It's unfortunate.
He understands, like Perez, how to operate across a whole different variety of teams, whether it's one that's emerging from the bottom of the grid, whether it is a works team like Mercedes and really cutting it at the top, or whether it is that midfield team for Sauber and they're sort of trying to figure themselves out the next path of where they wanted to take the project. Of course, going forward is going to be Audi. Their wins have also been mightily impressive as well. They're on most occasions to bring home the largest points haul on the grid, and when you think about some of the results that they have come through with, they've been pretty impressive. The biggest results that come to mind was Perez in 2020 at Bahrain, when he took victory despite spinning on the first lap at that Sakir Grand Prix, and making up all the time through the field with a completely awesome display. And then for Bottas, my favourite win of all has to be coming back into the 2019 season and showing all of his critics and silencing them that he was here, he meant business, and he could mix it with the likes of Hamilton and Vettel. And what was even greater about that victory was pulling a 20-second lead over Hamilton, which of course at the time was at his prime, was at his peak with that Mercedes car. So he delivered and he showed what he was all about. So they clearly both have the talent to snap up whatever opportunity is in front of them and maximise results for their team. Maybe not Perez in recent times, but he has shown it before his Red Bull days, and even in some of the earlier Red Bull days he had under his time there. So could we say the same about all of these things with other drivers that were shortlisted for the team? It wasn't just Sergio and Valtteri on this big list for Cadillac. A bit of a wish list, I guess, starting from scratch. Many would argue that in pole position was Zhou Guanyu, who became the first Chinese F1 driver in the history of the grid with Sauber, many thanks to the now team principal of this new project of Cadillac, Graham Loudon, who is Zhou Guanyu's driver manager and was at the time. However, to put Zhou in the car, who didn't have the best of times at Sauber, ahead of Bottas, who's been there most recently, it would have left a bit of a sour taste, I think, and kind of didn't make as much sense as Bottas did. And then you have the Honey Badger, Daniel Ricciardo, strongly linked with the seat at the time, maybe more with fans than with the paddock, but it's also become well known that Daniel is enjoying his time away from the grid now. He is retired from racing, and I think given the pressure that's been placed on him throughout various different periods of his time in Formula 1, he didn't want to come back under that intense scrutiny again with his return that he had with Racing Bulls, and unfortunately just didn't go to plan as much as he hoped. And then, any American drivers, I hear you call. It is, after all, an all-American led racing team. Of course, Cadillac, such an incredibly synonymous brand over in the States and the world over. Well, Colton Herta, who was of interest to Red Bull a few years ago, been on the tips of a lot of people's tongues for a long time to come over to Formula 1, and we now know he's not going to be in the main driving seat, but he's going to be a test driver for Cadillac going into 2026 and integrating into the team of what we're hearing now alongside that to race in Formula 2 to build up enough super license points. That's been one of the stumbling blocks as to why he hasn't been able to get into an F1 seat, and the fact he's never really driven in Formula 1 as well. And we know from Romain Grosjean going the other way from F1 into IndyCar that IndyCar is a completely different series, requires completely different driving styles, techniques, the formats are all completely different as well. So for Colton Herta to then go into Formula 2, it will help him build up enough super license points with the FIA, and then will look like a very attractive and realistic proposition for the American Cadillac team. There was also murmurs of Kyle Kirkwood and Alex Palou coming into the fray, but the issue and the face of it really is that none of these drivers have ever competed in Formula 1, and Cadillac would have enough on its plate anyway to deliver all of that, let alone trying to show their drivers all of the nuances and certain bits that go into Formula 1, the paddock politics, etc, etc. I think the other thing that Cadillac don't want on their hands going into the next year or two is the kind of reputation that they bring in drivers and have wrecked their previous profile that they've built up so incredibly over their careers, and could be so quickly destroyed in Formula 1 as we've seen so many times. I think the other reason that also plays into Cadillac's favour is that Bottas and Perez also have had the experience in works teams too. They'll be able to help develop along that road with the team's own power unit, the engine. Another big plus for Cadillac to be entering the sport rather than depending on other suppliers for too long, and perhaps creating that gentleman's agreement. Say if they're taking on a Mercedes engine and they approach the works team on track, could get a bit awkward, and we don't need that in the sport. We've had enough of that over the last few years. And a team principal they now have in Graham Loudon, who will have learnt from the previous mistakes with Mauricio as his time as sporting director then, to chart his team on the right path, hopefully, and in unanimous agreement that the 11th team on the grid is a good thing for the sport as we head into new regulations for 2026, even though they've had to pay 350 million smackaroonies as a dilution fee. Ouch. We'll continue this all in the comments below after. Let me know how you think Cadillac will get on in the 2026 season and how they are shaping up to be in the mix. And I'll catch you in the next one.